Good morning, Titans Nation. Welcome back into another edition of the Morning Glory Show. We got a fun one planned for you today. It's me and B-Will at B-Will-TFTV at TFTV Sports. You can follow me on all social media at Glory Days Sports. But the Titans turkey hangover is for real. They go into Houston, slap up the Texans, go down to Washington, and piss in their own hands. So we'll be talking about that and so much more on today's episode. But B-Will, we're rested. We had last Thursday off. You have a
bye
good
week.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving was good, man. The late bye was all right too. So everything's good. Everything's good. It's what's crazy though is we were in the middle of the off season. This past off season, we were dragging on like, man, season can't get here soon enough. And what are we waiting for now?
Man, we're waiting for next season already. Already
crazy.
And we're waiting on April at this point in time. We got to see that draft. We'll be talking about the Combine, the Senior Bowl, and all things draft coming up here pretty soon. But we got to finish out this season, figure out what we got. And I think that's what's kind of going to revolve around. I mean, there is still a 0.2% chance the Titans make the playoffs as of right now. So it is not officially dead.
There is a chance, too, that I find a way to marry into some money, Amy Adams-Strunk, and I get to run the Titans. There's a chance of that, too. So, we'll see. We'll see. I wonder which one is a better chance of happening.
I think about the same amount of chance of Treylon Burks coming into his own next season on the Titans becoming a actual wide receiver for us.
But Treylon Burks today.
You're right. Treylon goes on IR. Julius Woods, 6-game suspension as well. So it's been an interesting week for the Titans, at least. I wouldn't say anything as far as good. We got players talking about the cold being the 42-degree weather being the issue out there on last Sunday against Washington. So there's a lot going on, but this is a new week for the Titans, and we're going to be at home for Jacksonville, and that's going to be without a Trevor Lawrence. So take that as what you will. I mean, we've talked about on this podcast that Mac Jones is maybe not too far behind Trevor Lawrence at this point in time.
About the same this year.
It's not a big difference, and somehow they still have their head coach, if I remember correctly. So that's biggest surprise to me at this point in time. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and I kind of wanted to start today's show off just by talking about what is the issue with the Titans. And that kind of comes down to, is this a leadership issue? Is this a coaching issue? Is this a personnel issue? Is it ownership? At this point in time, do you think we have the key pieces in place to be competitive next season?
So I think I know it's going to sound like I'm straddling the fence here, and it's sort of what it is a little bit, but it's a little bit of everything. So the ownership is not the best. Like if you were to look at the NFL and say, pick a set of owners that you want to lead your franchise, our owners will not be one of them. I think we can all agree on that, right? But I wouldn't say that the owners are necessarily the reason that we're continually losing games or why we're not putting a good product on the field, because they've invested into the franchise for once. You got some owners that don't invest into the franchise at all. It could be a lot worse. So they're doing that. Maybe they just meddle a little too much. Amy does herself, but even she has, after this offseason, she's been out of limelight, maybe because we've been losing, and she came in the fold in the Houston game. I don't know why she takes it. Well, I know why she takes it so personal, but some of these things as an owner, you've got to insulate yourself, and she doesn't really do a good job of insulating herself with things I need in the situations I think she needs to. Now, to the personnel is obviously not good enough. We know that, and we knew that going into this offseason that it wasn't good enough, and that's really a holdover from the previous regime and their inability to draft consecutively years and years and years of not being able to draft, and us drafting and spending a lot of capital in O-line. We spent a lot of first-round high-end draft capital on O-line that has not panned out. And then you couple that with the Treylon Burks trade, and that's the culmination of this previous regime, Vrabel included. And then I even attribute this Will Levis pick to the previous regime and Mike Vrabel. Not John Robinson, obviously, but I would attribute that to Vrabel's guy. If you go back to Levis's pro day, who was grinning ear to ear at their equivalent of Hooters up there in Lexington. Tim Kelly, Mike Vrabel, the pictures on the internet, they were happy. You could tell they thought they got their guy at that pro day. Carthon didn't even attend the Kentucky Pro Day. So, that's something that we've got to pay attention to. There was a bit of a rift last year and leading up to the draft. Carthon only had a month or two before the draft. You know what I mean? So we haven't really overhauled the scouting department, and that's something Carthon said he wasn't going to do. He was just going to channel them a little bit more, and we've seen the fruit of that already with some of these late-round picks that have come to fruition and, Jarvis Brownlee and others. So the personnel is a work in progress, and it was always going to be, and you can't plug as many holes as we had in one offseason, and you just can't do that. So it's going to be a multi-year project with the personnel, but the ownership has to give the personnel team and the general manager the time to do this, right? On to the coaching, the leadership. I think the leadership is there, but it's so at the coaching level, but the coaches can only do so much leading, if that makes sense. And people don't really understand that because a lot of these people that are, diehard fans, I'm not going to say a lot of them, but a good amount of people that are diehard fans are not necessarily diehard, but, Titans fans and the ones that are most vocal on the internet, how many of them have been a part of a successful team, a successful sports team? The coaches aren't really doing the leading if your team is where you need to be. The players are doing the leading. It's the players leading. The quarterback is leading. The offensive line, each room has guys that are really leading, and we don't necessarily have that yet. And that's something that we talked about in the offseason. We should know as fans who those guys are. We should know who's going to go on the banners of the new stadium. We should know who's going to be on the banners of this stadium. We should know. It shouldn't be a surprise who the captains are. And if it's still a surprise who the captains are, you have a player issue and a player leadership issue. That's the way it is. And that's the way it has been this year. It starts with quarterback, in my opinion, because the quarterback is where a franchise is going to start and stop. They lead the franchise. So the abysmal quarterback play that we had in the beginning of this year is still holding over until now. Not necessarily the play, but the hangover effect from it. These guys were thrown in the towel. You can't win with a quarterback doing that. So we're already got guys that are sitting. Snead, could he be playing? Maybe. Because some of these other guys be playing through injuries, and we're in a playoff push. I guarantee you a lot of them would be playing right now. We're at the point now where we're in the gauntlet of the season. Guys are making decisions, allegedly. I don't know. I mean, and I agree with them about how much pain they're willing to go through when your team has 3 wins. It's a decision that you have to make, and this decision you have to make as a medical staff. It gives you different parameters as a medical staff and as a coaching staff with what you're willing to put your guys through when we're at this stage in the season with this record. You're not going to put a guy out there, and he's not going to take a freaking what was a little shot he takes, Jake? I know you're a medical guy.
Oh, you're talking just like the pain relief shots that they do.
He's not going to take that to go back out there to get a 3rd win on the season. Who's doing that? Are you going? Nobody's doing that. So that's the point of the season where we're at, and that is that's a culmination of the absolutely historically bad quarterback play we had in the beginning of the season. And that's part of why I'm out of Will Levis. These guys, you can't believe in that. You've already seen what he is. You can't believe in that. There's no turning that around. As bad as that was, you can't turn that around and expect to win Super Bowls with that quarterback. So to answer your question, if I were to rank the problems, whether that's personnel, player leadership, or personnel leadership, player leadership, and owner leadership, I think it lies in the player leadership and then the personnel leadership and then the ownership leadership. Because the ownership, they're insulated their way, right? They've spent the money this offseason. They've spent the money in the past for us to be able to get guys in. They were proactive with getting rid of Vrabel and getting rid of John Robinson. A lot of these people still wanted them to there, and you see people clamoring for Vrabel still. But it starts and stops with the players, and then after that, it's the structure that they're put in to be able to succeed. And I think that structure has shown to be able to win games in the first season. It's a process in that too.
No, I almost agree with almost everything you said there. Before we hop into that, though, shout out to everybody in the comments. Come join Amar and Stevie. Tighten ups to those two. And MB in the chat, kind of hitting on Amy as well. She says, has been great, and the public has been too harsh. We spent a ton on this offseason on free agents, and no one complained when it was happening. Hindsight is 2020. I agree with an extent to that. I mean, at this point in the season, ownership is kind of out of it. And as far as the money spending goes, I mean, she was going to spend that money regardless. It's going to roll over. It's spending it this year or next year. And bringing in this new regime, you're setting up for failure if you weren't to bring in these free agents. You can talk about the front office and the free agents they decided to bring upon us. And I think that's a whole different story. I think Rand Carthon did a pretty good job, and I think he continues to do so. And he's not afraid to admit he's wrong and move away from certain players. And I think as we progress through these additional drafts this year and next year, I think we're going to see that come to fruition. I think something to bring up that might be of note is Chad Brinker. We bring him in as this money connoisseur for us, and we see him handing out those dollars for the most part. But when it comes to the analytics side of things, which he did say it's going to take 2 to 3 years to kind of build that up, but he gets this job off of this injury analytic model that he has that tells them that they should invest in this player or not. And when we look at those free agents or draft picks they brought on, I mean, LeJerry Sneed obviously hasn't been on the field for most of this season. Cheeto, same thing. We bring in Cedric Gray, been injured the entire season. We got Cushenberry, who's on IR now for the season with the Achilles. So I don't take into stock a lot of what he has to say in regards to that front, just because it hasn't been proven to this extent. Doesn't mean it won't be in the future, but we talked about it with this old regime and the medical staff that they had on, that this was a historically bad handling of those situations. And we saw those injuries, the soft tish guys, for countless years. It hasn't been as bad this season. It hasn't gone away.
It's a lot better. I'm saying comparatively to what it was.
Better.
Yeah. You can only improve on which the cards that you dealt with.
And it's the NFL. Injuries are gonna happen. It's freak injuries. And when you're throwing these big, fast bodies against each other, it's inevitable at that point. When it comes to the personnel, I think we don't have a leader out of that group. I think Kevin Byard, Derrick Henry, those were those leaders we had out there, specifically on offense and defense. And now we're trying to manufacture Will Levis into being a leader for us. And we've talked about it on the show. It just comes off fake to us. What I did like seeing on Sunday was defense was awful on Sunday. And we'll talk about Denard Wilson, I'm sure, too. But Will Levis at least brought them back within a 2-score game. So I thought he was leading by his play at that point in time. And that's what I want to see more of. I want him to go, hey, I've got you, defense. I'm going to go score a touchdown here, or I'm going to get us within striking distance and then get us off the field then. So I think that was a sign of improvement from Will Levis, and it's something we haven't seen to this extent outside of maybe Miami last season. So I think he's continuing to grow. As of right now, I think they're rolling with Will Levis next season. So I think that's
we have a choice.
I don't think we do either. And I mean, I think we're both in agreement. It's Shador or bust. I don't think Shador is going to be there when we're picking. And I don't think Rand Carthon should or will move up for that draft pick. I don't think within this draft it makes sense. So I think we're kicking the can down the road, maybe in 2025, 2026, and we're looking at those quarterbacks. We got to play out this contract with Will Levis, though. And maybe he transcends and maybe he continues to grow, because we did talk about it at the beginning of the season. It was historically bad quarterback play. Then we kind of moved into average, and we're kind of seeing some glimpses, which that's been the Will Levis experience, is he always has glimpses of great play. It's not consistent, though. And I think he's
still turning the ball over a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, he's gonna. He's gonna. And that doesn't mean that's not the end of the world for me. I mean, Brett Favre had interceptions every single game. He was a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and the game has changed slightly. And Patrick Mahomes might be a better example. Patrick Mahomes turns the ball over. I think he might be up there with the leaders in interceptions and turnovers this season. So that's not the end of the world. He has to take those risks, take those chances, because he has the arm talent and the ability to do that. And I think The offensive line on Sunday wasn't awful. I mean, maybe J.C. Latham may have been the key spot that was very hindrance for them over there on offense. I think what
He's
we're
regressed
seeing
the last 2 weeks.
he really has. And I mean, he's a rookie. So I mulligan that. I think he's going to improve. He's getting beat with things that we thought he would get beat with. It's the speed to power, getting hit with the inside moves, and getting beat around the edge.
We talked about it in the draft process too. That's a long season for these rookies.
It's very long. It's very different from the collegiate season. And as we get down to the stretch, that's when they kind of gets to that point. I think I'm not worried about J.C. Latham. I'm not worried about Peter Skoronski. Daniel Brunskill has been great at center for the last couple. I mean, he hasn't been noticeable, which is a good thing. Dylan Radins, that's one that I'm keeping an eye on as a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be back on this team next season.
I don't.
NPF outplayed him on Sunday,
and
that tells a lot. NPF wasn't awful. I'll say that. And we get Jalen Duncan and Ojoku, I believe was the other, or Leroy Watson. Those are the ones that are coming back and practicing as of yesterday. So we'll at least see some more competition there. But at this point in time, I think the coaching staff is going to say, hey, this is MPF's job to lose again down the stretch, which I'm sure he will.
MPF is like that child that you have that is a knucklehead. He's not as smart as the other children. You got to be a little bit harder on him. But when he succeeds, you just smile.
Yeah. It's all gravy at this point in time. We know what we got there. As far as Callahan goes, I see no issues there. I think him and Denard, you can even go on special teams and say these new coordinators that have never called plays before, I think they're learning on the fly and they're getting better at it. Denard Wilson has regressed these last couple of weeks, but I think that goes back to the personnel. I mean, you're missing Legarius, you're missing Cheeto. I know Rodgers dealing with the shoulder, if I remember correctly, and still fighting through that. So you've got Darrell Baker and Jarvis Brandley is a 5th-round rookie out there playing on the outside. And I think they're doing a pretty decent job outside of Sunday.
Considering. And here's what people have to realize, too, about that defense. How long has the defense carried this team and, got to stop, went off to the sideline, got a swig of water, interception, fumble, ran right back on the field? How many times does that happen this year?
Yeah, countless.
That shit gets old.
Especially to start the season.
That shit gets old mentally as a defense. And if you haven't played the sport and you haven't been in that situation before, you're not going to understand how draining that is mentally. And I understand they're professionals. But this is when it comes to roost, when that happens continually every single week. And you're holding teams to 10, 13 points, even 20 points in the NFL, which is really good at this point, the way the game is, and you're losing still, it gets old. And that's why I say it starts and stops with the quarterback, because they affect a lot more than what we just see on the TV. They affect the leadership of the team. They affect the camaraderie on the field and controlling of the game. They touch the ball every single play. They control a lot more than we give them credit for. And Levis doesn't control much. He can't even control himself. So, he's not up to par. And this little glimpse and purple patch, that's all it is. But you got people that are clamoring for him and say, quarterback is the least of our worries. Absolutely not. It's the biggest worry, and it will always be while he's still the quarterback. We'll be in a situation, I guarantee, and here's the thing, and I hate to say this now because we're going to go a whole offseason talking and being optimistic this offseason. I know we are. But if this guy's our quarterback next year, look at the 2024 New York Giants. And that's what situation we're going to be in next year. He might even be cut next year. Who knows? But there's a lot of similarities with, Daniel Jones and Will Levis, in my opinion. I see a lot of similarities there.
I think talking about cut candidates going into next season, I think the one that really stands out to me is Jaquan Jackson as of right now.
He's terrible.
We're talking special teams.
You mean Pro Bowler Jaquan Jackson?
Doesn't make sense to me. Tulane fans are amazing. I've talked to many of them on Twitter, and they come out for their guys. I'll say that. The green wave is a real thing. But Jaquan, he wasn't a great returner when he was at Tulane.
I need the green wave to watch Jaquan back to where he came from. Get him out of Nashville. Just because he's the roommate, and that's on Carthen.
That's what
And
I was going to allude to.
That's my thing with Carthen. That was a bullshit pick, man. We knew it when we drafted him.
Yep.
Everybody knew it, and people tried to cover it up because they said, "Oh, Tajay's guy," and he's on the video when he gets drafted. I knew then. I said, "This is a BS pick. We could have got Malik Washington, even though he ain't doing." He ain't doing too much in Miami. But he's got weapons in front of him.
Yeah.
If you put him into this team in the slot, it's a little bit different situation. But that was a terrible pick. It's a 6th round pick at the end of the day, but it's the principle of it. Come on,
yeah,
man.
It's not the end of the world. I mean, you draft him to be good at special teams. He's obviously not that. And people
is that what they drafted him for?
They didn't draft him to play wide receiver. I can tell you that.
Oh, I thought they drafted him to be, Tajay's roommate or something.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking locker room guys.
Locker room guy.
Jaquan is that guy for you, maybe. He's at least the backup to that guy. So,
but we had a locker room guy before, Darren Bates.
Right?
Locker room guy.
And Darren Bates was good at special teams.
Good at special teams. That's the difference with him and Jaquan.
Yep. Yeah, go check out the Raw Room. But Jaquan, I don't think he's going to be on this team next season because I don't think he's going to be a returner for you. And I don't think he there's so much talk about this week that he's probably not returner this week. It might be Mason Kinsey. He might be back. He's eternal.
The energy I have for Kyle Phillips, I now have for Jaquan Jackson. And I'm
not to that level. I'm not to that level because when Kyle was at least at wide receiver in the slot, he did some things. Jaquan has done absolutely nothing. Kyle's biggest issue was he couldn't be on the field.
Yeah, but I'm saying the energy I had for Phillips.
Yeah.
It's Jaquan Jackson's about to get Bernadette.
I don't have energy for either of them. So I guess it is pretty much the same.
Well, you got to think I ain't really gave Hooker too much. I bullied him into playing good this year. I'm going to try and do the same with Jaquan Jackson.
I don't think he's on this team next season. I think if we're looking, he's not going to contribute on special teams. And we're looking at the wide receiver position. I mean, Bryce Oliver, I think, is better than him at this point in time. I think Bryce is going to be I do too. And I think he's going to continue to grow into the next Nick Westbrook-Akine. That's his trajectory right now for me. So,
and he was a cut candidate for when we were talking about the roster, he was a cut candidate. And look at him now.
Well, we talked about it. We're like, this guy needs to be on the practice squad.
Oh, I was talking about NWI.
NWI. Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, dude didn't play a snap for 4 games. Didn't play a single snap.
Hey, man. He's like the kid. He's like the kid on the football team that's sitting over there in the corner eating the oranges during the game, not even during halftime. And you put him in the game, and you're like, where did this kid come from? Like, why?
I mean, that's been him his entire football career.
Yeah.
Rose up in high school. I don't think he was a single star. I think he was unranked. Shows up to Indiana.
Who's your daddy?
Didn't get drafted. I remember watching that tape when he was brought on, and I was like, this is the slowest wide receiver I've ever seen. This is not a offensive key piece for anybody. And then he just continues to work. And we're talking about leadership. I mean, he might be the leader of the offense right now.
He's most tenured.
Yeah. Yeah.
NWI, man. Oh my gosh.
So I mean,
the state of this team.
Maybe that'll rub off on Jaquan, but I think the coaching is going to get better as they progress. I mean, they're brand new. We talked about it all offseason that this is a brand new regime. Yep. And it's newer than most new regimes. I mean, they just scraped this together and brought in good-minded people outside of special teams. Who
bears the responsibility for the season then, would you say?
So I think it comes down to, I would say personnel is the biggest issue. I think we don't have the key pieces in place. We don't have a right tackle. You arguably don't have a right guard. You can't be, as much as we love NWI, I don't like NWI as your wide receiver 2. I think he is a great wide receiver 3/4, and he should definitely be on a 53-man roster. But you got to find somebody this offseason. I don't care if it's Terrion McMillan or Luther Burden or there's some guys later down the draft that I think they should definitely look at, and I'm sure they will. They've got some capital this year. As far as free agents, I'm not familiar with them at this point in time, but you have to find somebody.
Yep.
And I think Rand Carthon does a good job of identifying that. And I mean, look what he did with DeAndre Hopkins. There was no way that we thought he was going to be a Tennessee Titan when he was. So I think Carthon, he has those relationships. I think he will find a guy for us.
Now, one way I will say that ownership is at fault for is they flew DeAndre Hopkins in, coach. Come on, now. They flew him on a Southwest flight. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
and that's the ownership part that I'm talking about. What is wrong with you? What are you doing with the PJ, Amy? Give him the damn PJ. Come on, don't fly the man commercial Southwest. I shouldn't be sitting next to DeAndre Hopkins when he's on his way to Nashville on a free agent visit. Come on now.
No, and that's probably one of my biggest issues with ownership is I've never seen a multi-millionaire, billionaire, whatever you want to call it, that is so bad at public speaking. I mean, she can't read from a note card. That's how bad it is.
That's what happens when you're born into it. What do you have to go to school for?
And
not that going to school has anything to do with it, but what do you have to learn for? You don't got to learn shit. And my problem with her and the ownership is their lack of attention to detail. That's the type of detail that ownership needs to be all over. I don't even expect Amy to be on that level of detail with not flying a free agent that's really coveted. I wouldn't say coveted for us in coach. Send the PJ. That's not even something she should be over. That's something that somebody under her should be doing. That's not even a call that the GM makes because the GM has to get permission for that. So it's in between the GM and in between Amy. And if there's not somebody there, then, Amy's got to do it. But, we got to get better at that part of it.
What I worry about with Amy is that she blows it up too fast, which she has an itchy trigger finger, and we've seen that in the past. So I think hopefully she just lets this marinate. I think this coaching staff could be very good. They are not yet. So I would rank it personnel. I think we have it the same: personnel, coaching, and then ownership. I don't remember if you had those first two swapped or not.
Yeah.
But ownership is out of the way at this point in time. I think Callahan and Denard Wilson, those are probably the guys for the position. And I like what I've seen out of Callahan. I think Denard Wilson is going to learn to adapt. And that was the thing with Callahan early in the season. We're like, hey, the first couple drives, amazing. And then it just falls apart. We've seen him learn from that. And I think a big part of that is Will Levis's progression as well. So,
and we really got to keep it a buck with ownership.
Yep.
Most definitely. We really got to keep it a buck with ownership with how much money she's spending on this new stadium compared to other owners. She's spending quite a bit. Not Jerry Jones level, but she's spending quite a bit of money for a new stadium. She could have just let it ride out and let it get terrible and then sell the team. She's not doing that. She's putting up some of her own money to really improve the city, improve the stadium. That goes a long way, right?
I think it goes a long way with fanship. But at the end of the day, and I think you were the one that originally brought it up, was like, hey, this is a business adventure for her. I don't know how much this is leaning for the Titans as much as it is for her own profitable gain in the future. This is an investment. I think she's invested in this coaching staff too. Yeah.
Yep. I suspect that she's doing this to prop up the company, prop up the business to be able to sell. That's what I suspect.
If she were to sell, which I don't think she will, I think we're probably stuck with the Strunk family for a very long time. If she was, though, I think building a stadium at least keeps the team in Nashville, which I'm not in Nashville. I have no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So I think from the outside perspective, I think the team is there to stay, which awesome. I think the fans need to do a better job, though.
The fans don't hold up their end of
they're not there.
The fans don't hold up their end of the bargain to be able to point at ownership and say that ownership is a problem. I really don't want to say this, but we might have collectively, I don't give a shit about these people on Twitter, for one.
Worst fans in the NFL.
Yes. And thank you for saying that for me. We do. And I'm not just saying that about the people on Twitter. Those are the vocal minority, but I'm saying of showing up and showing out for this team. We have a lot of people that do, but it's not nearly enough. It's just not. It's too fair weather, too fickle.
How much does that play into just being a new franchise?
A lot of it has to do with the new franchise. There's no tradition.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily just the fans' fault, but the fans bear responsibility in creating that tradition just as much as the team does. Fans can create tradition. The team is not the only one and the ownership is not the only ones that has to create tradition. Because if they're the ones creating the tradition, it's not as real. It's sort of artificial. It's like Will Levis's leadership. It's just not real. You know what I mean? And if the fans are the ones to create their tradition, that's what creates your franchises. Like even Dallas, like they have the best fans in football. Whether you want to say it or not, they might be the most annoying. Them, Pittsburgh, best fans, Buffalo, best fans in football. That's the standard. Showing up every single week, no matter what. You think Jerry Jones ain't selling out every game down there? Or at least the people are there, even though they're terrible. They're still there. They're still engaged. It's just not. There's no fair weatherness out there, and I don't think it's not just the Titans for the fans. See other teams in Nashville too that see this. It is.
Yeah. Let's hop into these questions and comments because we got a lot of them that we've kind of shot past. I think Amar brings up a good point. Getting rid of Ernest Jones was a mistake for the linebacker core. Looking shaky as of right now, and I'm the biggest Kenneth Murray supporter on this on the Titans, but he hasn't been great as of late. And I think how Rand Carthon kind of addressed this position this offseason could be a knock on him if we're looking at it that way. Bringing in Cedric Gray, James Williams, obviously Cedric got hurt, but he wasn't looking great before that. Same with James Williams. You bring in Ernest Jones, and that linebacker core at that point in time was playing very well. So I think that's something that's got to be addressed this offseason again, and we're just back to the drawing boards. But at the same time, you got a great draft pick for Ernest Jones. So at the end of the day, I don't mind it. And it sucks this season.
I think it does suck the season, but I think this is a position that's really obvious that he kicked the can on. And it's a position you can't kick the can on because it's not a premium position.
Exactly.
You know, so you can kick the can on the linebacker position because they're a dime a dozen. You can get a linebacker in that plays well. It's easy to fill this hole. So he flipped Ernest Jones, got us a pick back, which is important. We can get that. Now the Cedric Gray pick, I wasn't sold on that to begin with, and I didn't see it in Cedric Gray. But that's who we got, and he's gonna have to figure it out.
I called James Williams a better linebacker than Cedric Gray before he was even drafted. So I don't mind it. I think that's going to get addressed this offseason again. Probably not with a premium pick. I mean, that's just what it is. It's not a premium position. It's just like running back. You're going to be able to find one in you'll find one in day 3. Rounds 4 through 7, you can find a starter. And it might be some development. Jerome Baker, awful, by the way. Jerome Baker is, every time I see him on the field, I just miss who we've had out there for the weeks past. We won't bring up his name. But we got
good point about the linebackers, though. It is shaky. So
it is very shaky, and that's going back to the personnel. I mean, they just don't have the Jimmies and Joes to match the Denard Wilson X's and O's, and that's fine. Lots of talk about Shedeur Sanders in the comments. Shedeur is not what people think he is. He's not that good. Stick with Levis. I don't agree with that sentiment. I think Shedeur fits the scheme so much better than Will Levis does. But at this point in time, we're tied to Will Levis, and we're not getting Shedeur. I'm sorry to break it to Titans fans.
We're not getting Shedeur Sanders. My thing with the whole anti-Shedeur Sanders sentiment, what are the reasons? You can say he's spoiled. You can say he's not a team player. I don't want to hear that shit. But what can you point out on tape? Maybe I'm asking a lot. What can you point out on tape that will not translate to this offense, to this scheme? There's not much.
You're looking for touch and precision under Callahan, just like Joe Burrow brings to Cincy, and that's what Shedeur does.
And ability to process. Like that's Shedeur all over. Look who Shedeur trains. Who's his mentor? Mr. Precision, Mr. Timing, Mr. On Time, Mr. Processor, Tom Brady,
Mr. Goat.
You can't say that. You can't say that he's not who he is, who people think he is. Because what do you think he is? And what do you? And this is not just to UMB, but this is to the naysayers. Milrow. But what do you think he is and what do you think he isn't? And why do you think he wouldn't translate to this team in this game? That's all I ask. And if you can present that, great. Let me know. But I don't see it.
This team needs swagger. We've talked about it. God,
That's who's
since
going
the
to be on the
show
billboard.
began. Exactly. That's jersey sales. That fits not only what Arthon and Callahan want to do, but it also fits what Amy Adams wants to do. You get a face. You get a face of the franchise. And, I mean, quarterback is a crapshoot in the draft. I mean, we might come back in 5 years and say, hey, Shador was a bust. It's fine. Because almost you go back in the last 5 seasons out of the draft, how many great ones have come out? 1, 2, maybe 3. So that's just what the nature of the game. And if you don't have a premium quarterback, you don't have a premium franchise.
Yep.
So
I think have a shot at the Super Bowl.
Exactly. I mean, God, look about these last Super Bowl champions for the last 2 decades. I mean, it's Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and then just some random names here and there. I mean, Big Ben's got one, I know. I mean,
great Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yes.
Eli, Hall of Fame quarterback. Every Super Bowl winner over the last 2 decades, besides Trent, we're beyond Trent Dilfer already. So we're already, if you go back 2 decades, it's the Brady, Mahomes, Peyton Manning, Big Ben era, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Eli have all won. You've got to have a Hall of Fame quarterback and win a Super Bowl, especially in the era of Mahomes. It's just fact. You're not gonna get out the AFC with even average quarterback play. It's not happening. You're not even. You can have a great quarterback in the AFC at this point, and you're not even making the playoffs. That's how top heavy the AFC is with their quarterbacks. It's not happening. Look at Cincinnati, great quarterback, can't even get it out the division. That's where the league is at, and it starts and stops with quarterback play. You know, you got to have a little bit of defense, but you got to. It's like you said, it's going to continue. That's why I'm not sold on Detroit winning the Super Bowl. Not good enough quarterback play to win it for me. So
I think Jared Goff has come a long ways, and that's kind of what you're wanting out of Will Levis, is this guy that just puts it together year after year and starts adding on top of that. But he's got a long way to go to get there. And Jared Goff, I mean, we're talking historically bad rookie season, one of the worst that's ever been. He was so bad, but he grew, and he has to have that want and that fire to drive that. I think Will Levis, if not has anything, it's a hard work ethic. So I think he can improve, but he has a long way to get from where he is today to a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And I don't know if that's in the cards. I would lean against that at this point in time. Stevie saying, watching Winston and Nick's battle with a score of 41-35, you got to wonder how long it will take Levis to get to that level. I mean,
excellent point, Stevie.
If you were wanting Jameis Winston out there, which we're talking meme kings, Jameis Winston's probably the only one over Will Levis at this point in time. Jameis has been Jameis since he got into the league. I mean, we're talking 30 touchdown, 30 pick season, 1 of 1. And the reason Denver scored as much as they did was because of Jameis Winston. So we can't forget that. It's these disastrous plays. Those come with the good plays as well. It's learning how to channel the good and limit the bad. Jameis has just never had that. He's great for fantasy football, but on real life field, maybe not. Bo Nix has been a great rookie. I will say that. And Bo Nix here in a couple of years, he might be the guy that came out of this draft class, and he might be number 1. I mean, Jaden Daniels and him are the ones that are fighting, and Caleb Williams is in the cellar right now. So that doesn't mean anything for their careers. But Bo Nix has a great coach ahead of him and Sean Payton, and they're doing great things over there in Denver right now. So I'll say that.
Great point, Stevie. And it leads me to a point of a lot of these Titans fans that are clamoring for Will Levis and are all behind him saying he's the guy. I don't think they watch other teams, because you can't possibly watch other teams and say that's who I want as my quarterback, because you're just seeing what Will Levis, and you're just seeing the standard that Levis has set. Look at the standard set across the league, quarterback play. You can't watch the Titans and be accepting of that. Impossible. You can't.
Yep. So I think we can kind of move on to this week's matchup, which we got, as far as AFC South goes, we got the week off. It is Jaguars Titans. Titans favored by 3.5 at home. So as soon as me and Jonathan catch up, you kick it back into high gear and move past us. I got that little free win 2 weeks ago because I predicted that the Titans would beat Houston. Change that up. So I got that little catch up, and then you picked Washington. Me and Jonathan, we picked the Titans, and you moved back ahead of us. So it's going to be an interesting matchup against the Jaguars. Jaguars probably the worst team in the NFL at this point in time, and this is the worst defense that the Titans will face this season. Luckily, we face them twice. You can say luckily because we might get a good game out of Will Levis and kind of see that trajectory. But at the end of the day, that's going to hurt draft stock as well if they win the game. So I think this team is fighting for Callahan. Like we mentioned earlier in the show, Trevor Lawrence moved to IR. Azeez Ishir is a sleeper agent for the Titans still to this day, and he's going to be the villain, like you put out on social media. And I thought it was very funny, maybe not funny, but interesting that Ramon Foster was the one that sat down with him to review the suspension, which was upheld for the 3 games. So I'm sure he's going to get some hate and some talk on social media just for that, for why is the Titans guy being the guy to interview the Texans player. So,
hey man, shout out to Azeez.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bad hit. I think he should be suspended. 3 games, maybe a little bit. I don't know. That's very interesting.
Opens a good conversation about quarterback sliding.
I forget who had the take, but I did agree with the take. If you're a runner at that point in time. You should be treated just like a wide receiver or running back in open space. Late slides, you don't see that. So I think that might be the move to make, but I don't think they will do it as far as the NFL goes. No, because at that point in time, I mean, that's money out of their pockets. They want to keep quarterbacks healthy. They want to see points on the board. So we'll continue to hamstring the defenses, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, Azeez knocked out Trevor Lawrence for the remainder of the season. So
yeah, that's not why I say shout out to him, but just I don't think it was that dirty of a hit. I mean, the hit itself was dirty. I don't think the intention.
I think it has gotten more hate than it deserves.
That hit happens every week. Like maybe not in the NFL, but it happens every week in college. It's really hard to stop yourself doing that. I mean, it just is. Your momentum, you're already off. You've already left your feet once he slides late like that.
So we're talking nanoseconds for that decision.
Nanoseconds. But when you slow it down and you do it frame by frame and you watch it 30 times, it's going to look worse every time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a shitty situation. It's all it is.
Overall, it is.
And it's not going to change. We're still going to see these hits in the future. And Azeez, I mean, dude's a missile when he sees it. And he saw it. He was coming.
Hey, this guy's playing for a contract, man. I don't, that's the context that people need to realize. These guys are playing for contracts. These guys are playing to support their families and to continue the caliber of living and cost, their lifestyle that they're accustomed to. This is what it is.
Yeah. But when it comes down to this matchup, I think we're going to see some points on the board. I think Brian Thomas could make a big play. That's what he does. Trevor Etienne, his team is struggling against the run at this point in time, which is polar opposite to what we saw in the beginning of the season, but it has changed. Harold Landry has to step up. Jeffrey Simmons, T'Vondre Sweat, they got to do the thing. T'Vondre Sweat popped up with the injury report yesterday as well and did not practice. Jeffrey Simmons didn't practice as well, but it was listed as rest. So we'll see Jerome Baker out there again. We'll see Kenneth Murray. This secondary is just so beat up, though. And maybe that's the one thing that I didn't like seeing on Sunday was we talked about it with Denard Wilson. He wants these dogs, these disciplined assholes with grit, and we didn't see that. They were playing off coverage. It looked like this was a Mike Vrabel-led defense on Sunday. Just how they were playing. We saw them mix up the blitzes and stuff. And they blitzed like 50% or something like that. And I do like that based off that. But you're giving them off coverage, and Jaden Daniels just picked you apart from the get-go. And then you have Chris Rodriguez running for almost 100 yards on you as a backup. I mean, you can't have that. You can't have that. So I think Callahan and Will Levis are going to have a good game. I think we're going to see it, and I'm predicting it right now that it's going to be in the mid to high 30s for points for the Titans. I
Okay.
think if I had to, and we will guess, but I'm going to say 35-17, Tennessee Titans win, and they move on to whoever they have next week. I mean,
Gotta get that point differential back up. Tiebreaker.
yep, you're right. I mean, this is when the team should be hitting its smooth sails. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for. This is the easiest part of the entire schedule for the season.
Yeah, I'm not as optimistic as you are, Jake. I'm thinking the Titans are going to lose 20-17 is what I'm thinking. I think the Jaguars are going to get a shot in the arm. They're a little bit pissed off from this Trevor Lawrence thing, and that's not what we needed. They didn't give it. They were on autopilot before leading up into this, and then they got this. They got reason to be pissed off, and this they're going to take it out on us. You know what I mean?
And
and
I think
they got
why
a shot in
you're
the arm
ahead
with
of
Mac
us,
Jones.
Right? Yeah, I think why you are so much farther ahead of us than me and Jonathan is we keep taking the Titans. That's been the biggest issue. This is my third week in a row. I don't recall. Hey, am I in this fourth time I've taken them, fifth time I've taken this season? They've lost almost all of those games. So,
hey man, it's tough, man. It's tough. I see Jacksonville coming ready to play. I will say that, and that's because of the Trevor Lawrence injury. They're going to be pissed off, and they're going to have it gives them more juice and more reason to play this year or this week.
yeah.
So that's what I'm afraid of, and the Titans don't have that. They're going in the opposite direction. So
I think I see the realistic scenario where the Titans finish over 500 in the division. We lost to Indy. We got that game out of the way. They beat Houston in Houston. Mm-hmm. I think they could sweep the Jags and then win one additional game against Indy or Houston down the stretch.
And then our what's his names would all align our predictions because I think we all predicted to sweep Jacksonville, split the other two.
Yeah,
it's just the out of division record that we didn't predict well.
Yeah, we did not do well on that at all. Those
Nobody saw Washington 7, being who they were.
Projections are
Chicago
out the door.
We should have won. You know, it's just the season was there to win if we had average quarterback play.
In the comments, Amar predicted 24-17's Titans lose.
Amar is a smart man.
To yours, which, I mean, I think there's going to be points. I think if the Titans only score 17, I will be very disappointed. I will say that. They aren't losing to the Jags, says MB, but I will wish they would. Jags have packed it in the season, although I want the Titans to keep losing. And that's kind of what I've talked about in the last weeks is, hey, cheer for a win, but hope for a loss. Because that's where we're at.
Stop being so emotionally invested in these guys at this point in the season.
If this is ruining your Sunday at this point in time,
you have more problems on your hands.
You might need to get something checked out because, I mean, this is where we're at. We're talking 0.2% chance they make the playoffs, like we were saying. And we know at this point in time, this team is not a Super Bowl contender, even probably going into next season. It's going to take multiple years to rebuild this. Yep. Shout out to Jim Wickens in the comments. Check out NFL Draft Fanatics, no I in Fanatics, to follow him. Or you can check out draftprofessors.com. If you're looking for a great mock draft simulator, you don't want to pay for PFF, go check out Draft Professors. You can also check me out on their channel every Monday night, 8:15 Central Standard Time, with me and Josh as we cover running backs and linebackers currently for the NFL draft. But they put out daily draft content every single day from all perspectives, and there's multiple people on that channel. I know a lot of us are trying to get up to mobile this year to check out the Senior Bowl, but go check out that channel as well. MB projected 30-13 Titans. So MB, he's on my track right now outside of Shador, and Amar is right there with you. So if you guys have a prediction for the game, drop those comments down below. Make sure there's over 130 of y'all in the chat. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Type in Glory Day Sports over there on YouTube. Hit that. Enter the chance to win the signed Tajay Spears jersey giveaway. Be giving it away as soon as we hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. Getting closer by the day. Got about 70 away, if I remember correctly. And then also go check out our shop down below. We got a great, almost Chicago Bull-esque Morning Glory Show logo on that. Get you a mug, get you a t-shirt. They're great quality, and you can get yours now. Get it for somebody for Christmas. Get it for Christmas.
Yes.
But we're going to get out of here. We appreciate everybody in the comments. Tighten up, and we'll check you guys out next Thursday.